Hello, everybody. Craig Wessels here from Yank on the Footy, and welcome to episode 344. I'm coming to you from Sandusky, Ohio, and we're going to be diving into round 19 of the AFL season and the AFL fixture. I do hope you'll head over to my website, ayankonthefooty.com, and get signed up on the mailing list there. And if you enjoy the podcast, I hope you'll leave a five-star review there as well. Um, this week's club of the episode, they are the Dudley United Eagles of the Kangaroo Island Football League in South Australia. The club was founded back in 1965 when the rival clubs Dudley and United merged together. And this weekend, they are holding their reunion weekend, wearing jumpers that are patterned after their 1984 jumpers. They're celebrating premieres from, must be clubs that end with a four because 1954, 1984, 2004, and 2014 as well. Now, according to their Facebook page, the weather is not being very cooperative to them. So the ferry services from the mainland have been disrupted. Looks like there's a lot of wind. I did look at the weather network. Looks like there's a significant amount of wind. Temperatures aren't that cold. Of course, I'm from Ohio, where cold is a little bit different than it might be for some people. But it looks like they may have some trouble getting some people there, but the games will go on. The celebration will go on as well. I do hope that the weather is as cooperative as possible and that the Eagles have a very successful weekend facing off against the Wissanger Panthers. And I want to wish the Eagles the absolute best, and I hope they have an awesome reunion. So I also really want to take a quick moment before we dive into things and offer my condolences to somebody I consider a friend in the podcast, somebody who's does a couple of podcasts of their own who I listen to regularly. And this is Jack Elam, who lives in Tasmania and is the creator of Tales from Three Corners, which is a vastly different type show than what maybe many of you listen to. Um, it's very bucolic. It's very relaxing. There are short snippets of these episodes, and it's a very family friendly little program that she does as well, just telling wonderful stories of this little community that she has created. And she also is one of the co-hosts on a show dealing with writing, which she's involved with this called The Word Count. And I enjoy listening to the banter and discussion there because in many ways it is similar to what I'm doing with my podcast. Although these are professional writers that are working to getting books published, things of that nature as well. Um, but Jack very frequently talks about very close companion of hers, Fen the cat, and she lost her buddy Fen very recently. I did want to pass my condolences along to Jack. It's very sad. We have a 16-year-old Wheaton Terrier who is slowing down, and my wife and I have begun having those inevitable discussions about what do we do and when do we make decisions on things like that. And I'm not looking forward to that at all, but it's an inevitability, unfortunately. Now, before we jump into the tips for this round, this would have been my third week in Australia on my trip this year had I not pushed it back to next year. Looking at the schedule, I definitely would have been at the Cats game with the Bulldogs. I unfortunately would have missed the Hawthorn and Collingwood game because it time-wise that butted right up against the Cats game, so I would not have been able to make it from the MCG down to GMBHA Stadium for that game. But there were several games at Marvel this weekend, so I would have hopefully caught a couple of those while I was there. And then next week would have been my final week there, where I would have been hoping to catch the Cats play in Tasmania against the Kangaroos. But let's go ahead and jump into the tips for this week. And I guess I should um, quickly mention, Mick is not with me today. This is nothing on Mick's part. I'm actually recording this on Thursday morning here, so it's late Thursday night into Friday in Australia. I'm working. How do I describe it? I'm working my ass off at my summer job. I just finished a stretch of 9 out of the last 10 days. I enjoy what I'm doing. I'm walking anywhere between 8 to 10 miles a day, hauling. Quite frankly, I work at this amusement park, and I'm emptying trash cans. Now, I know that sounds rather mundane, but I kind of like the cathartic aspect of it. I'm getting a lot of exercise, but I'm having to remind myself also that, you know what, you are 61 years old, okay? And while you enjoy this, there may be an inevitability where you kind of have to slow down a little bit. But I'm enjoying it for what it is, but it does tend to kick my butt. So there are days where, I get up and I have a couple of hours to work on things, whether it be around the house, and my recovery periods are a little bit longer, if you will. Okay, so um, and again, I'm setting aside, resources for this trip next year with this. So, um, but I enjoy doing what I'm doing. Okay. And again, for those of you who don't know, I've been a school teacher for 30 years. Our school year starts back up in August. So I'll be heading back to work here very soon to my real job, if you will. And I'm looking forward to that, getting started on that. I'm teaching another new course this year that I've not taught before. So that's going to take some getting used to as well. But enough about that. I do have a couple of interviews in the can that I need to get edited, but it's again finding the time where I'm conscious uh, and able to actually put those out. But I do want to let you know that coming up here very soon, with my 400th episode, which was last week, I am going to be putting out a short episode where I kind of go through, and I went through and I looked at all 400 episodes, and I jotted down the names of some of the, to me, unforgettable guests that I've had on the show. And I'm going to be releasing an episode looking at what I think are like my top 15 or top 20, and I haven't decided on the number yet, um, guests that I've had on. Okay. And there have been some phenomenal people that I've had on, people that I'm still to this day amazed that I've had the opportunity to talk to. I'm shocked that that has been the case, and I'm thrilled that they have chosen to set aside time to chat with me. But I've been working on that list. I've got it over here on the table next to me, but I'm going to get to that to you very, very soon. I will be out of town for a few days next week as I go help my daughter work on getting her classroom set up and getting her moved out of her college apartment into her grown-up apartment, if you will, which is only about a mile away. Although she's not moving in yet, I'm going to get everything into storage with her, and then we'll jump into getting her classroom set up because she goes back to school in early August. It's the way her school year is set up. So looking forward to seeing her for a couple of days and helping her out with that as well. So let's jump into the tips for this week, and because that's what you're here for. So we've got Essendon hosting Adelaide, and the Bombers, they've lost 4 out of 6. Their percentage is extraordinarily suspect. Okay, it's lower than the 6 clubs that are below them on the ladder, and they're only 6 points ahead on the ladder of the Hawks. And the Hawks, I think, are sitting at 13th, if I'm not mistaken. Um, the Crows have won 2 out of 3, but I think it's very safe to say that this is probably a case of too little, too late. It's a club with a lot of talent, but also a club that, quite frankly, has not performed up to expectation this year. I know Mick would be saying that as well. Um, so, and again, as I mentioned with Mick, yeah, this is not a reflection on him at all. I love having Mick on. I just have not been able to find the time where I'm cogent enough to sit down with him when he is available. So I'm hoping to get him back on, probably not next week because I'm going to be out of town, but hopefully the week after that for round 21. Um, this is definitely a game that the Crows could win. But since it's on the road, I think the Bombers do find a way to get it done. They keep their distance ahead of the other clubs on the ladder. I'm going with Essendon to win by 11. But again, I still worry about how much that percentage is going to come back and bite them in the butt later on in the year if other clubs manage to eke out some wins that they would have possibly otherwise not been able to gain. And if we look at Essendon closing out the season, I mean their fixture, it's they've got a gauntlet that they have to run here at the end of the year. Okay, they got the Crows this week, they've got the Saints, and then Dockers, Suns, Swans, and Lions. Uh, you've got to feel good if you're an Essendon fan about the fact that your club is in the position they're in right now, but that's a rather worrisome run home with those four clubs. Okay. Fortunately, three of those final four games are in, actually, every game except the game against the Lions is in Melbourne. Okay. Whether it be at Marvel or one game at the MCG. You've got the Bombers playing the Dockers at the MCG. So let's move on to the next game of the round. I'm going with the Bombers to win that one by 11, as I'd mentioned. We've got St. Kilda hosting West Coast at Marvel. The Saints have lost 3 out of 4, but fortunately for them, they don't have to leave the friendly confines of Marvel Stadium the rest of the year. They're there the rest of the year. Okay, they're there. I think you could go ahead and have the players, you know, stencil in their names in the parking spaces in the parking lot for them, and they should be fine there. The Eagles. There have been a couple of good things that have happened for the Eagles this year, but again, it's all about adding more talent in the 2024 offseason, figuring out who's going to still be on this list after this season is up, who's going to be the new senior coach. Um, they're going to try, like I said, this is an audition for every player on the Eagles list, whether or not they're going to be playing in the blue and gold, blue and yellow, or if they're going to find a job somewhere else. Because this is a club that is still in its development phase, if you will. They've got a lot of older players that still need to be shifted through there. And I'm going with the Saints to win this one by 14. But again, it's all about players getting themselves on video, showing that they still have enough petrol in the tank in order to warrant having a job at their club or hopefully catching on with another club, whether it be perpetually on their waffle side or a sample side or wherever they might end up if they don't end up getting the spot with the big side there. But again, I'm going with St. Kilda to win this one by 11. And then we've got GWS hosting Gold Coast at NG Stadium. The Suns, they've got to get their first win on the road at some point in time this year, don't they? Well, I think they do, but I don't think it's going to happen this week. I think the Giants get it done this week. I think they hold on to their spot in the 8, and I think they're going to win by 7 in this case. Um, I think the Giants at home are a tough beat. They're a tough beat. Their crowds are starting to get a little bit stronger for them. You've got fans that are very passionate about this club, and hopefully it's growing. I really do. And for both of these clubs, I think it's good for the AFL to have a healthy GWS and to have a competitive Gold Coast. Now, I think deep down, many of us would like to see Gold Coast actually find their way into finals this year, to have a validation. We've talked about this on the podcast a lot, to have a validation of the investment in time and revenue and resources and blood, sweat, and tears, whatever terminology you want to use in terms of getting Gold Coast relevant. And they're really close. They're really close. Okay. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with them in 2025. I I don't know if they're going to be able to make it happen this year. If we take a quick look at their run home, they've got the Giants this week, and then they've got the Lions. Now they do have the Eagles, they've got the Bombers, they've got the Demons, and then they finish off with the Tigers. So they've got 2 games that they definitely should win. One of them on the road. 2 of them on the actually both of the games they should win are road games. So they should hopefully get for themselves 2 road wins at Optus and the MCG with the Eagles and the Tigers later in the year. But bringing the Lions in, bringing the Demons into Gold Coast works out well for them. Tough matchup with Essendon, though, at home or at the MCG. But in this case, I am going to go with the Giants to win by 7. And then we have what might be the game of the round. I think the next 2 games, well, there's 3 really good games this weekend. Hawthorn hosting Collingwood at the MCG, and Hawthorn, has the opportunity to jump up a few spots on the ladder because I'm tipping the 3 clubs that are ahead of them to lose, one of them being Collingwood. So I've already told you, I'm tipping Hawthorn to beat Collingwood this week. The Pies, they've scuffled a little bit. They've dropped 3 in a row. They've still got a rather extensive injury list, although some of these players are going to be coming back. Jamie Elliott came back this past week, had a pretty decent game his first game back. against the Cats. And, while they're only 4 points outside of the eight, they've still got three teams ahead of them. So they're sitting 11th, 12th on the ladder right now. Yeah, I think the Hawks are on an ascendancy, and I think they're going to get themselves a big scalp here. As much as I guess, and I've said this before, as a Cat supporter, I know I'm not supposed to like Hawthorn. I know that, but this is a fun club to watch play football. And just think, had they gone level the first four games this year, had they split, where are they going to be right now? I mean, they'd be sitting in a really, really good position if they'd even split. I mean, they'd have a couple more wins. They'd be sitting at 44 points. I mean, they would be on the cusp of being a top four side had they just split those opening games of the season. And Hawthorne's run home is, let me pull it up here real quickly. Yeah, they've got the Magpies this week. Then they've got the Crows, the Giants, the Blues, the Tigers, and the Kangaroos. So they've got three games after the Magpies that they should win. They should be favored, I think, against well, it's in Adelaide, so but I think you got to go with the Hawks in that situation because they're going to be in a position where they're fighting for a final spot and are going to be a little bit more hungry. Um, you got the Tigers to the MCG, and then they go back to Utah Stadium for the Kangaroos. So they should, if my tip with the Magpies holds true, you could see them winning what, one, two, three, four of those final six games, and then you got the Giants and the Blues in there. Could they split against them? Could they possibly win five out of their last six? Do the Hawks play finals this year still? It could happen, and I know if you're a Hawthorne supporter, you're thrilled about that. And if you go back and you listen to the preview episode I did back at the beginning of the season, I talked about how I was wanting to put Hawthorne in the eight, but they had a couple of injuries in defense that really worried me as far as putting them in that spot at that point. So I left them outside the eight, and they're getting close to proving me wrong here. And this is becoming a fun club to watch play football, and I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes for them in the future here. So I'm going with Hawthorne to win this one by 10 points. I just think right now that they're two ships passing in the night. And this is not to say that Collingwood is a bad club at all. They're the defending premiers, but they're a beat up club right now. They've got a lot of injuries. And I just don't know at this point in time, right at this moment in history, that they have enough to match up well with Hawthorne. And I just think Hawthorne is playing really good football at the moment. Okay. And we got the Geelong Cats hosting the Bulldogs. I would have been at this game. Okay. I would have been at this one. The Cats have righted their ship. They've won three in a row. Bulldogs have won three out of four. I did see somebody, and I know that the initial teams have come out, and he's been listed as an emergency. Um, but somebody did post that the Cats are likely going to be forced to play Reece Stanley this week against um, the Bulldogs to allow Sam DeConey to actually face off against Sam Darcy. Um, you know, very tall, young, up and coming, key forward. Um, I but it looks like they're not going to be doing that. Okay. I'm guessing it's going to be Jack Henry's job this week against Darcy. So I think he starts plucking at that armpit hair, if you will. Um, I saw somebody last year, and again, this is a good Bulldogs team. Don't get me wrong. They've been a little hit or miss sometimes. And of course the Cats have been as well this year. They lost five out of six at one point in time this year. Um, a couple of years back, I saw people describing the Cats forward line as the wolf pack. Kind of like the German U-boats in the North Atlantic during World War II attacking, Allied shipping lanes and that type of thing. But then somebody referred to them, and I don't remember where I saw this, but somebody referred to the Cats forward line at the moment as Mosquito Fleet, the little small fast boats that are attacking. And Stengel, Myers, Close, Rowan. I kind of like that. That's they've and I've said this to a few people online. Um, I would love to see Tom Hawkins out there, but I have to tell you, I feel yeah, I do hope he comes back in. I hope we've not seen the last of Tom Hawkins, whether it's this year or if he decides to play in 2025. And I have no idea what his thoughts might be. Um, but seeing what Shannon Neal has done recently makes me feel a little better about the inevitability of Tom Hawkins not wearing number 26 for the Cats much longer. Okay, I seeing what Shannon Neal has done has made me feel a little more comfortable about that. He's got great hands, moves very, very well as well. It's becoming a more consistent kick. Um, I'm going to go with the Cats to win this one by 2.5 goals, by 15 points against a very good Bulldogs side. And they hold on to and I'm still shocked that I'm saying this, their top 3 spot on the ladder. And we got Port Adelaide hosting Richmond. The Tigers' injury list is extensive. Is their best 18 on their injury list better than the best 18 that they could put on the ground right now? You could certainly make that argument. Okay, you certainly can make that argument. Port's lost 4 out of 6, but um, I think that the Port Adelaide Power they're too good of a club to not beat the Richmond Tigers this weekend, even though they continually want to shoot themselves in the toe. Will Todd Marshall be back out there this week? I don't know. He's got a little bit of a hip issue, but it sounds like it may be okay. But I'm going to go with Port Adelaide to win this one by about 5 goals, and get themselves back into the 8 this round. Okay. And then we've got Brisbane hosting Sydney in a very, very good matchup. Looking as though Charlie Cameron is going to be out. And let's just be honest. You go back 8 weeks, 10 weeks. The 1/3 mark, if you will, of this season when the Lions were absolutely floundering. Okay, they were playing very, very bad football. They could not get a win. I mean, you go back and look at the Lions; they lost their first 3, won a couple, then they lost 2. But in the last few rounds, they've won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They won 6 games in a row. If you haven't looked, folks, the Lions are number 4 on the ladder right now. They're sitting 4th. They got the double chance right now. How many of you thought that was going to be happening this year after the way the season started? I didn't. I really didn't think that was going to be the case. They've won 8 out of 10. Um, the Swans have dropped 2 in a row had dropped 2 in a row by a combined 3 points, a 2-point loss and a 1-point loss. Before they rebounded last week against the Kangaroos. And if you listened last week, yeah, I did tip the Kangaroos. Okay, I was thinking Isaac Heaney's going to be out. Let's just go with the Roos there. I got that really wrong, really, really wrong. But it looks like the Lions are going to be without Charlie Cameron for the next 3 rounds. I think the Swans are going to get themselves a huge road win here by about 1.5 goals. I'm going with Sydney to win by 9 points. Okay. I'm going with Sydney to win by 9 points here. And I think that they're just about to lock up that top spot on the ladder, and get themselves, home ground advantage right up until the grand final if they make it there. And we move on to Optus Stadium with Fremantle hosting Melbourne. The D's may be getting Max Gawn back this week after his foot and ankle injury. The Dockers, they dropped a tough matchup with the Hawks down in Tasmania, but back home, I do think they're going to get the win. They've won 3 out of their last 4. I'm going with the Dockers by 16 points on this one. It's a fun club to watch again. It's been a great year for ascending clubs and seeing clubs, growing into themselves, into the potential that we think that they should be having. Okay. And then the last game of the round, we've got Carlton hosting North Melbourne. And no, I'm just going to put it out there right now. I am not tipping North Melbourne to win this week. I think they'll be competitive. Okay. I do think they'll be competitive. The Blues have a very interesting run home. They've got the Roos and the Saints and the Eagles over the last 6 rounds. I do think the Blues solidify their spot at number 2 with a big win, solid win against the Roos. I'm going with them to win this one by 4+ goals. I just think that the Blues are setting themselves up to have a very solid run in the finals this year. I do think there's going to still be some shifting on the ladder. Okay, there are clubs that are outside the 8 right now that will be in the 8 before it's all said and done. My big concern about Hawthorn, as I'd mentioned, them possibly getting in there. My big concern with them is that their percentage is still very low. I mean, their percentage, the top 13 clubs, and they are basically the cliff, if you will, because they're at 36 points, and right behind them is Adelaide at 26 points. But Hawthorne's percentage is only 95.4. Okay. You got everybody that's well above 102 above them. Collingwood's 100 and almost 103, Gold Coast 106, 114 for the Bulldogs, 103 for Port Adelaide. Those are the clubs that are not in the eight that are ahead of them. So they're going to have to win even an extra game to leapfrog all of those clubs while they possibly find themselves, stubbing their toe on these other clubs. Um, so I think Melbourne might find themselves dropping out possibly. I worry about Essendon. I really do. I just think that percentage, and again, it's only a couple points off. It's 98.8 right now. Okay. It's 98.8. It's not awful, but for a club that's got as many wins as they have, that percentage should be higher. They've been absolutely thumped a couple times this year in games that they should have, that they lost, but then they got absolutely obliterated when they lost those games. And they've had games where they have lost by significant margins, a 30-point loss, 69-point loss, 26-point loss, 45-point loss. Those are going to bite you in the butt. And a lot of their wins, 4 points, 6 points, 12 points, 20 points, 12 points. So you're not padding your percentage when you're doing that. You're getting the 4 points on the ladder, yes, but that percentage is really important. And I do worry about Essendon when it comes to that sort of thing. Okay. I really worry about what's going to happen to them towards the end of the season then. So there are my tips for round 19. We'll be hopefully knowing a little bit more. Maybe some clubs are going to start to slide out a little bit more after this round. Folks, look out for one another. Check up on your friends. Make sure they're okay. If you need to reach out to somebody, please don't hesitate to call someone. Those help numbers are listed in the show notes of every single episode of this podcast as well. So please don't hesitate to reach out. Remember, if you would be so kind, head over to my website, ayankonthefooty.com, and get on the mailing list. Leave a review if you'd like to do so. Be a huge help. If you want to help support the podcast, you can click on that Buy Me a Coffee button. If you got an idea for a great guest, maybe it's you. I would love to get you on. So drop me a note there as well. Once the school year actually begins again, I do actually find it a little bit easier to schedule interviews at that point in time than the schedule that I have right now, because I'm learning that I guess I got to put it out there. Last week, I was having a conversation with my wife via text message. I was sitting in my office at my summer job, and the person that works the morning shift had called off for the week because the doctor said he wasn't allowed to work for the week. Well, the secretary there glances over at me and said, "Oh," I said, "Okay, I'll take his Thursday shift." So that took away one of my days off last week. So I was off Wednesday of last week. I was off Wednesday this week, yesterday. Spent hours working out in my garden. I'm going to be going back out there later today as well. But she called me elderly. And I guess, being 61, I guess technically I do fit that. But I kind of picked up that extra shift to spite her about that. So, but yeah, it's all with the goal in mind of having a terrific trip next year. Knock on wood, of course. Hopefully nothing else comes about that prevents that from happening. But you never know. Life is life. You never know what's going to go on. But remember, folks, you can reach me at ayankonthefooty@gmail.com. You can find me on X. I hope you'll give me a follow there at @yank_on. Yank on the Footy. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram as well. Look for Craig Wessels over on LinkedIn as well. And as always, folks, I appreciate the kind words, and may your dribble kick never hit the post. I will catch you later. And this has been episode 344 of A Yank on the Footy. I hope you'll share the podcast with your friends and family. Tell your friends about this crazy American that loves your game, that you've been so gracious at sharing with me. And until next time, cheers and goodbye.